Okay, so this is going to cover digital registration and using the NHS app for registering for online services. So why do we need to offer digital registration? So primarily because it's NHS England guidance that patients must be able to register either by post or digitally, and that not having ID should not be a barrier to registering. In these COVID times, it reduces footfall at the practice, so patients don't need to come in with paperwork. It makes life easier for prospective patients, and the kind of the easier and slicker that we have our kind of welcome mat for patients, it's sort of the best kind of introduction to the practice, rather than if it's difficult, that probably won't give them a great impression of the practice. So the better we can make it, probably the happier we will get our patients and give them a good first impression. And I think also it's a useful review point now to think about the registration processes and see what's working and not working, because, well, I don't know about everyone on this call, but for our practice, we've sort of done the same thing for years and years and years, and it's just kind of rolled over. But there's lots of new IT things coming on board that we can potentially use to make our life and patients' life easier. So this is basically just copied and pasted from the NHSE letter from the 27th of March, so I won't read all that out. The Wessex LMC page is really useful for a whole host of things, but they've also got some really useful resources for patient registration. So thank you, Shanka, for sharing that, and that's a link for people. And then just basically questions to consider when we're going through this webinar, and just to think about generally about the registration process. So do you want a registration form? So you can get lots of useful information, past medical history, family history, but with GP to GP, a lot of this information comes to us anyway. And how are we using this information? Are we coding it all into the record? Obviously there's a capacity issue from someone in the practice to code that, so you probably don't want to be asking things that you're not actually going to use. So part of this process, this webinar is the first point, but then we will be asking practices for their feedback on potentially creating an Ealing wide form that's got the information that everyone wants to ask. Also with children, you can get lots of key information such as legal responsibility, schools attended, a lot of sort of safeguarding information, which is quite handy to get at first registration point. And you can just use the GMS form, the GMS1 form. There's an online form, so you can get patients to register that on your website rather than a registration form. But there's probably some key additional questions over and above the GMS1 that you still want to ask. So we'll be asking for feedback on what you want included on the form. So how to implement the digital registration process. So in theory, it's very simple. There's three steps. So you email Silicon Practice and say you want to use their digital registration form, and then you update the registration page on your website. And I suggest copying Shanka's wording, which I've put into a Word document, and I can send out. Sorry, Shanka?
No, sorry. I just got a blip. So Karen.
Which I'll send out as a Word document. But basically, if Shanka, if you're okay, if I show the Cloister Road website.
Yeah, I'm okay. And if we have time at the end, I don't mind, you know, when I do my section, if you want me to show the back end, I don't mind logging in and showing how it looks at the back end, if that's also helpful. But yeah, we can definitely show that.
Fab. So let me. What I'm doing.
Do you want me to quickly show? I'll just show, and then I'll hand back control to you. Then.
Okay.
I'm just trying to think if that's going to work. It may not work. Let's just go with. Okay, so hopefully people can see my screen. That's okay? Okay, now I just need to. Okay, so how it looks on our practice website. So, you know, under the patient tab, you've got the typical how to register with the practice. So the first thing is, I mean, like what Vin said, in our practice, we thought, you know, our systems are really dated, really clunky. To actually register. So here we went to how to register with practice, and what Silicon, here's your lovely eConsult banner. So then what Silicon do, which is a bit confusing, is when you send that email and you activate it, they add in 2 extra pages. So here, if you click here, you've got the adult form, and we'll show you that in a second. Sorry, just accept cookies, so it makes it look a bit better. So this is, we'll come back to this in a second, but I'm just going to show you the layout. And then they've got a children's form, and it is a bit fiddly because if you think about it, it comes out as 2 separate pages, And one of the first things I'm going to mention is if you need to do further steps rather than just filling in the form, there is a risk that the patient just goes to that form, thinks they've done everything but just completed the form, and they won't realise there's other bits that you may as a practice want to do as part of your practice process. That may say confusing, but I'm going to step back to show them how we've tried to do that at Cloister. So at Cloister, this page, how to register with your practice, the first thing we try to do is make it like a step-by-step process. And you've probably got the catchment area page on your website. I decided just to pull it all in together. So this is how I walked them through the patient's process. I basically thought, step 1, check you're in the catchment area, and it's got the link to the catchment area check. Step 2, I said, please complete that online form, and I've showed them the link to those 2 pages, adult or child. I put a message in here because when you look at the form, at the moment, at the end of the form, it's got a standard message which says, please then come to the practice to with your ID for confirmation within 7 days. So we've personally put comments say to ignore that last comment in the form. That may be confusing, but I hope it'll become a little bit clearer as you see the form. And then step 3, we ask them to email their ID to us at Cloister Rose Surgery. And their signature. Now the signature bit, Finn may want to pick up. So we're a bit frustrated at the moment. NHSE is saying still to complete the registration process, they need a patient signature, either a signed WEC signature that's on that GMS1 form, or a scanned signature, any signature. That I do think is our big frustration. And until NHSE changes that approach, as a practice, we've said, look, can you just give us a signature? It could be even a letter saying we want to be registered. It could be just a signature, but we've asked for it. And then there are 2 IDs. We've captured the NHSE guidance about, we can't demand ID. So we're saying, if possible, just let us know. And we've clarified, and this was a change in our process, that we will not store these documents. So the LMC has flagged, these are sensitive information. They shouldn't be really saved in the patient's record, and they should be destroyed. So when you're doing your ID check as a practice, that's one thing that you may be doing a different thing at the moment, but it's one thing we'd flag. And then what we've done on our practice is we're very keen to try and capture their photographs of their face, so we can put it into system 1 and help with identification. Also helps in time with COVID with people wearing masks. So that's step 3. Then step 4, and we'll come back to that at the end of this, is we're trying to get them to promote downloading these apps, and we'll come back to that later. And step 5 is we're telling them then wait for confirmation that they've been registered. We'll either text them or email them, and we've set a 5 working day process. And then we're saying once you've registered, now you can request your online access through this step here. So this is the 5 steps that we've got, and the forms are here. Finn, are you going to show, or should we walk through the forms, or have you?
Yeah, I haven't put the. I was going to send them out as Word documents afterwards. So
okay, we won't spend time going through it, but just to give you just a flavour of it, it's really 3 pages. So here's page 1, which is your standard sort of partly GMS1 form. So like Finn said, when you look at the regulations, that LMC link, if you put all of the data that's captured in the GMS1 form into your one registration form, you don't need them to complete the GMS form separately. So this form contains all the fields that you need for the GMS1. So this is only one form that needs to be completed. So it starts with patient details, it's got health information, and then the final page, further information, really captures things like sharing preferences and so forth. And our discussion is that we were talking about one form. This form may not be perfect at all, and definitely not perfect, but if we had a conversation with all the practices, getting all their feedback, can we try to agree a set of changes to this form? The bill is astronomical from this company, just to make even, because they then have to change all 75 practices forms, the charges goes into multiple thousands of pounds per change. So we really can only afford to do this as one big effort. And it would be too complex for every practice to have their own form, and it would just be too difficult to manage as a process. Okay. I think, shall I hand back to you? Is that helpful? Or shall I just quickly show the back end? In the back end, how that looks. So if you just look at how that page looks, and hopefully it's not, it's quite straightforward. If you're looking at your back end of your website, is, it just appears like this. So this is the that page with the guidance, and I've just got shortcuts. What you're probably more interested in is how the actual registration form looks. when you look at the back end, this is this link here, Formidable ID2. What the company is doing is they use a separate company that plugs in, but you can still tailor some text above the form. But this link here is where which is where the form comes in. So that's a little bit about how the back end looks when you're trying to manage those changes. Okay, I'll hand back. So Finn, do you want to take back control?
Just quickly replying to a query about the 13-year-old cutoff as per GDPR. So we were told we cannot give access to parents for children 13 years and above. How can we then accept registrations? So that's only for online records. So if a parent has online access to book appointments, this gets automatically cut off at 13. So then the child needs to approach the practice and say, I want my mum or dad to make appointments on my behalf. But it's not all registration. So they can register as a patient. But if they've got if the parents have got online access for their children, that will automatically cut off on their 13th birthday. So I hope that makes sense. But it's not the registration process per se. It's just the online record bit. So let me see if I can share back my content now. Can I? Oh, I'm struggling with this so much today. I've done it so many times previously. No, that's not it.
You're on your team.
I'm on my team. Yeah. Sorry. Right. Share content. This one. Gosh, I'm going to spend half the meeting trying to do this. Ah, there we go. I've got it. Right, sorry. Okay, so email Silicon Practice say you want to use the digital registration form and they will upload the forms. So the forms are the ones that Shankar's just shown you, and then update the registration page as Shankar's just shown you. And then basically it's up to the practice to put a protocol in place to process the registrations when they come in. So the registration forms will come in from Silicon website, from your practice website, from the following address. So from noreply@ealingccgmailer.co.uk. And we've sent out a comms around ensuring that this email address is on your safe sender list, because otherwise it could go into your spam and then you're not going to see these patient registrations. So that's not an outcome that you want. And then these emails come with a password protected PDF. That password is the same for all of the registration forms, so you can ask Silicon Practice to reset that for you if you're not aware of it. But Shankar has also got a whizzy way of removing the passwords from these documents so they're not password protected. So I'll hand over to him now to show you that.
Okay. Aren't we a great double act, guys? feedback if you think we should do more of this double acting. Okay. Right, okay, so actually give me 1 second. I'm just gonna reshare again in a different way. Hold on. Here we go. We're going to hit Finn and I were going to hit the comedy pantomime circuit together, but we decided to, COVID just ruined all our plans. Okay, so the first thing is I'm just going to quickly go I'm going to jump to this a couple of slides here just to illustrate what Finn was just speaking about. So first of all, this is how the email comes in. So email comes in like that spam at Cloister Road, and it's got the form attached as an attachment. So you got, and when we said about adding in the as an email address as a safe sender, this is just a screenshot. So when you go to NHS Mail, add it in as a safe sender. Make sure you haven't put it in as a blocked sender. So we did send comms around this previously. And you might want to think about a rule. I don't know if you use email rules at all, but at Cloister Road, what we've done is created a rule like this, where we recognise it's coming in from that email address and it's got the words new patient registration, and it moves it into a particular folder. It's just at the moment how our staff are working and how they manage the inbox. That particular, I mean, I'm just flagging it as a point. It may not suit you as a practice on how you work in your team. That's just so that's just showing you that. Now, if I show you the actual, if I just show you the actual form. So this is a dummy form. This is me. I just did it literally minutes before the webinar. So when you open it on, so actually I'm going to open it again. I'm going to show you exactly what I'm going to do. If you open it automatically, you're going to open it in Adobe. We're suggesting that you open this in Google Chrome. So if you right click on that attachment and you say open with, and you go to Google Chrome, it will open up that document and it asks you for the password, just like what Finn said. So if I type in our password, it is now opened up this form. So it's just looking like a normal document. The thing though is, if you want to put this into System 1 and scan it, you've got to remove that password. So the reason we're asking you to open it up in Google Chrome is if you use Adobe to try and remove the password, you have to buy a paid version of Adobe, not just the free reader version. Whereas Google Chrome, it's free for this a bit of functionality. So all you need to do, and it's a bit obvious, you just need to actually reprint this form as a PDF. So you've removed the password. And you've got print as PDF, so I'm going to print it again, and I'm actually going to on my desktop, I can save it as a file. So I'm not suggesting you do it on your desktop. You may want to create a folder with your shared drive that you put it directly into. But if I just say new patient, so if I put new patient form 07010 or whatever, just doing it. You don't really go completely blank about how you want to do this and doing a webinar. So just saving it, and then it's done. So now if we just look at that new form, that new version, which I clicked the wrong one, so that's the wrong one. Okay, so if we just open that one, which it should do, my computer's just doing something strange. Okay, if you open it, you can see now it opens without any problem. The password's been removed. So that file is suitable to go straight into System 1 to go into scanning. So I don't know if that was a bit cumbersome. Did everyone get how I did that?
Yes.
Okay, so it's a bit fiddly, but it's your best way to get it back into System 1 once you remove the password. Okay, I'll stop sharing.
Mina, you've put your hand up. Would you like to ask a question? And can you right mouse from there, Shankar, and just drag it into scanning? You
can. I mean, what you could do is you could either retouch. I mean, I don't know how you're using your scanning functionality in System 1 whether you attach it to the practice email, but yes, you could just drag it in. That's how you could do it, or it depends how you want to do it. I mean, what our staff I think are doing is at the moment they're opening up the document and they're using a template to put the information in, and then they're just using record attachments to just put it in at the same time. But whatever's the quickest way for you. But the main thing was, I mean, and also this tip obviously doesn't just help with this. You've probably seen a lot of other letters that come in that are password protected for external agencies. So this is a quick way to remove that password in the PDF to then resave it without a password to put it into System 1. So it's just like what Alex said. It's a trick to save you having to buy some expensive software to do it.
Shankar, I've just tried to open it with Google, but it just doesn't give me the option. I was following you step by step, and when I right click, it just gives me the option to preview.
Have you installed Google Chrome on your computer as a web browser? That would be the
yes.
best.
I've got Google Chrome. Yes. As a web browser.
It definitely should. I mean, maybe we can talk about it outside of this, but it definitely should. I mean, all our staff can do it, and I didn't even have to tell them it was on their options, but I'm sure we can resolve that outside of this. Okay.
Could it be because I'm opening my emails in Outlook?
No, I mean, no, I'm just saying if you've got the PDF, suppose you save that PDF onto somewhere. I use desktop here because it was a test scenario. Right. As a practice, obviously information governance, you may want to use a particular folder in your shared drive where you save it. Okay. But once if you save that file into there and then try to click on that file and open it with the right
I see. Click. Okay, rather than directly from the email.
Yeah, not directly from the email. Sorry, that bit I should have made clear.
Okay.
You're going to have to save it somewhere to open it.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, we'll pull these steps together. I mean, we've just done this frantically at pace too, and hopefully even this is recorded. If you watch it again, it may become a little bit clearer, but we'll definitely try and pull these steps together.
So I managed to share my screen while you were talking, so hopefully everyone can see back on the processing registrations bit. So basically, I'm covering some of the stuff that Shankar has already covered, but if your practice has a catchment area, obviously you need to check when a form comes in that the address is in your catchment. So if you're subscribed to the out of area DES and you register patients from anywhere, that step obviously doesn't apply. And then the next bit is the bit that that there's been some feedback around. So check the form to see it's been completed correctly. So we've had feedback that some patients are not filling the forms incorrectly, or they're filling child forms on adult forms, or not missing out important information. So I think in fairness, this probably happens whether it's done via the website or in person, because I know when we were at the surgery and receiving GMS1 forms, the number of times that the patient didn't fill in their date of birth or the date they came to the country, and we'd have to call them back. So I think there's probably no way of completely patient foolproofing that. There are going to be things that they misunderstand or don't fill out, and they're not as used to the forms as we are. But obviously welcome any suggestions on how we can make it as easy as possible for patients to understand. So that will be our discussion going forward after this, as to what questions you want on the website and on the form, and also which questions have to be mandatory. So you can make questions mandatory, therefore they can't submit the form unless those are answered. So that's also an option. And then this was just the dragging into scanning. So basically you can from the desktop that Shanka was showing, you could right mouse and basically drag that into your scanning window there, just cut and paste, and then that will go straight into your workflow, and then however you workflow in your practice. So we workflow the document to a person who will code the information. It sounds like Shanka's staff do that at the point of when they've got the form, so it doesn't need to go anyone, they do it, but that's obviously up to the practice to decide what's the best process for your patients. So the registration form. So included in the Silicon contract are 2 web-based registration forms, adult and child, and I've copied and pasted the information that it asks for into a Word document, which I'll send out so people can have a look and see what questions are being asked. These are standard forms which were agreed at the beginning when the website template was being designed. So the CCG are in the process of funding a contract extension with Silicon for 1 more year. So the contract finishes in April 2021, and it will go, we're extending the contract to April 2022. So the CCG will pay every practice's annual fee and the amendments that are needed to the website templates. So I'm going to hand over to Jane here, because she's got some information about the things that she will need to collect from practices in order to be able to do that.
Yeah, hi everybody. So obviously we're going to send out some information about ideas for the registration forms, which is really important. As Shanka mentioned, any amendments that need to take place on the templates, there is a charge, so we need to get it right the first time we submit, and there's only a certain amount of money left to fund this. But while we're doing these amendments, I think there are some things that are on the website that need to be updated that are on all the GP practice websites, where what I wouldn't want to happen is for all of you to individually update those sections, like, for example, Living Well. In Ealing, that website doesn't work anymore, which is on the front page. So things like that I want to address at the same time. So when the information is sent out to you regarding the registration form, if anybody wants to email me anything else that's on your GP website that you think needs to be amended, just pop me an email. The local service section, where we do have functionality, I'm just pulling plans together so that we can get that up and running, especially to support the social prescribers within PCNs for signposting, because there's been quite a few changes. So that's coming. So yeah, it's really important that you feedback. Obviously, we want to get this done before the end of the financial year. So I think there will be some dates when the information is sent out for ideas for the registration form. We won't be chasing, so whatever we have, we will go with and then circulate the main agreed version and then take it from there. So your input is really valuable.
Can I just come in with a comment? And I know that Alex, I think Alex and I are the main clinicians on this call. Are there any other clinicians? Can I just put a challenge comment out here, just when you have the discussions about the forms within your practice? And I think Finn's on the same page as me with this, but we could all have different opinions. The question is this: do patients ever really reliably complete these forms, and do we really use the information that well? I mean, there's bits of good useful information like smoking, alcohol, that's useful, but other information about their past history, their drugs, do we often just recheck it again? Because I think there's a balance here between making a form really, really long and very complex, and no one actually ever completes well, versus it being short and they complete it better, but it may not answer everyone's need. And I think that's a challenge. Can we get all 75 practices to agree on a form or complete structure? The second counterpoint is, do we really need it as much in today's world of GP to GP note transfer? So if most of our patients are transferring from within England, we should get a decent transfer of information. And then the registration form, a lot of it is duplication. I appreciate, yes, we're going to get a lot of patients transferring outside of that from Scotland, Wales, where we don't get the transfer, or people arriving in the UK with no information. So there's definitely a value for the registration form, but I think that's one of the tricky conversations. And I do think when you give that feedback and you have those discussions within your practice, maybe you also need to have that discussion as well when you give the feedback. Otherwise, the risk is we will never reach an agreement of what it should be.
Yeah, I mean, I would add to that, to just for all the bits that you actually want on the form, or you feedback that you do want on the form, is in your practice to have the conversation about what you actually do with that information. So, for example, we currently code, you know, whether people are employed, but actually, and quite hilariously, we seem to have a really high proportion of psychiatrists. Don't ask me why, and I'm pretty sure that a lot of the people who've been coded as psychiatrists and not psychiatrists. But what do we do with that information? Does that affect their health? And if we were having a conversation with them about their, you know, their mental health or their return to work or something, we would document that anyway in the clinician's conversation. So, and their job might change. So, just for the bits of information that you think actually that is useful, but what do you do with it? Yes, you can code it, but does it really make any difference to the patient's health record? And if it's just going to cause more hassle to contact them back to find out information. So I guess my question is, when you're going through these questions, is to really think through, well, what do we do with that information? How useful is it? Because we can obviously collect information on all sorts of things, but there's no point if it's just sitting in the record not doing anything. So that's that, and we're going to send out a spreadsheet. Apologies, another spreadsheet for you to fill out, but we will give you plenty of time to fill it out because we've obviously got until April to get this all up and running. And a spreadsheet is just the easiest way for us to collate all the information from the different practices. So that will be coming out in a couple of weeks' time once we finalise the questions. And then these are sort of the key things that we need to include on a registration form. So we have to have the GMS1 questions. And for the Ealing standard, we probably need the carers questions and the TB questions because they are part of the Ealing standard. I think communication and accessibility needs are, and this is up for discussion, this is what I think, I'm happy to be challenged on it. Communication and accessibility needs, there's the accessible information standard, so we do need to know if patients need information in a different format. I think language and interpreter needs is probably also another useful one. And then for other topics, let us know what you think. So I've put past medical history. Do we need, now we've got GP to GP? Lifestyle questions, particularly, I think, diet and exercise. There are some questions on the Silicon form at the moment, which is, you know, do you have a healthy diet or an unhealthy diet? I mean, I don't know how I would answer that question for myself. What constitutes a healthy diet? So some of them, I really think they're not that useful to ask patients. And then other questions such as marital status, employment, religion. Do we need to ask it? What are we doing with it? For some patients, obviously, it will make a difference, particularly the religion question. But I think depending on it, that might be patient specific as opposed to needing to ask it for every single patient. But obviously, welcome your feedback on what you think. They're just my initial thoughts. So next steps on the digital registration bit is, our recommendation is to use the Silicon digital registration form for adults and children for the moment. So to get used to it, see what works and doesn't work, and get used to the process. And that will feed into what amendments you think need to happen so that we can then kind of compile all the feedback together to get one really useful form. And I think it's probably the last year that the CCG will fund it, so it's not going to be something that can be changed regularly. So we really want to make sure that we get it right. And I think the easiest way to do that is start using the form, and then you can see as it comes in what problems are being caused. And there's a charge, basically. It's not cheap to make any changes. So we want to make good use of the money and not. So we want to get it right first time, basically. So that is that for the next steps. And now NHS app to enable online access. So All practices need to be providing full online record access from April, and similar to digital patient registration, there's a way to make life easier for patients and practices, so they don't need to come in with ID to register for online record access. The easiest way by far is to promote the NHS app. So I don't know how many people have downloaded it for themselves. If you haven't, I would really recommend that you go through the process. So it allows you to register securely via the app. So they need their NHS number, and you have to take a photo of your passport or driver's license, something with your photo on it, and you also have to record a short video, so it gives you some numbers to recite. So the app does all of the security checks for you. And this is probably much safer and more secure than our staff checking ID, and it basically means that then they've got a login to the NHS app and they can access their records via the NHS app. So I really would encourage you to promote patients to use it, because then it does all the registration checks for you. And then once they're set up, they can view messages, get health advice, book and manage their appointments, order repeat prescriptions, view their record, and they can manage their organ donation decisions. Once the NHS login is set up, then patients can access AirMid via NHS login. And then once the patient has AirMid, they can send a request via the app for online record access. I'm going to hand over to Shankar in just 1 second, because as we've demonstrated, I'm not very good at this sharing screen business. So if I just do the last bits that I was going to go through, which is if a patient can't set up an NHS app. So not all patients can download the app. They don't have a smartphone, or they can't get through the security process. So for example, someone is registered in their married name at the surgery, but their ID has got their maiden name, it won't register them. So there are some patients who just can't get through the security process on NHS app, and they will then, it then tells them to contact the practice. So you'll need a backup process for this, and this is called vouching. And there's a full protocol on how to do this in the Ealing Standard Appendix 1. And I was going to try and show you on System 1, but all of our test patients have already got online access set up for all the training that we've done, so there isn't a test patient I can show you. But at our practice, we've got a waiting list, so any patients who call because they can't use the app are put on this waiting list, and we've got one admin person who's really au fait with it, and he calls them to talk through any problems setting up the app. And if they can't register, she will go through some security questions to make sure she's speaking to the patient. There's a list of questions also included in the protocol, and then once she's happy that it is the patient, she will click vouch for, and then on System 1 in the patient online access bit where you've got the ID verification, the bit that you need to do to make sure that you do is click these online credentials. So you need to click that you'll send them their username and password by SMS, and you also need to click third-party HSIC approved apps. And then once you click that, that will then give them access to the NHS login, the NHS app, to say that yes, you've checked, it is the patient, and they can have access. So I will hand over to Shankar again to talk through the how you do it on the end. He's made a video this morning while also being in other meetings, amazingly. So he's going to show you how you can access your ask for records via AirMid.
Okay. Wait, I'm just trying to think if you've got. I'm just going to wait. Give me 1 second. I may need to reshare. Hold on. And I'm just going to just start. Okay. Okay. So first of all, that must all sound. I mean, it's really hard to get your brain through all of that, and it is quite complex. Now, we did cover some of this in a council member meeting a little bit, which really attended by GPs, and we are planning another session that will focus on the AirMid app more in the future. So just want to repeat a little bit of what Vincent said, duplication, but just make it really clear. So the first message is we're basically telling you to really stop thinking about rolling out System Online. I don't know if everyone knows what AirMid is. AirMid is the app created by TPP that effectively has more functionality than System Online. But the biggest thing about AirMid is that it also uses the NHS login. So really, we're thinking this just, you know, we're all overwhelmed with workload, you know, as busy practice managers, admin, receptionists, we're trying to take away the workload of generating online credentials for you to have to verify and validate for this for every patient and move everyone to the NHS login. So in North West London, the NHS login will grant them access to obviously the GP system, but also it grants them through the NHS app access to Patient Knows Best. And I don't know if you know much about Patient Knows Best, but you know the hospitals like Imperial, their records, they are rolling online access to their patients through Patient Knows Best. So if we're just promoting one login, and I view it as a bit like the one Facebook login or the one Google login, it actually avoids a lot of duplication. And I worry that if the quicker we get them onto NHS login, the quicker our workload will be. And the longer we keep rolling out the system online, we're just creating more work for ourselves in the future. So I just want to emphasize that point. This is a really short video just to quickly say about the NHS login.
Provide a single way for people to prove who they are once, and then give them a single login that they can use to access a range of apps and services in the NHS. The thing that's really important for us to do is to link a person to their healthcare record online. To do this, we're going to follow what's pretty much becoming an industry standard. You might have seen it in banking, where you're going to take a photo of a trusted or official identity document, and then to prove it really is you, we're going to get you to capture a short amount of video of yourself so we can compare the two.
Okay, so that video makes it look really slick. I'm really impressed that Finn's got a great system in her practice where they've got one dedicated person. You can see the video and there's a photo upload ID. Like Finn said, I think the best step is that get all your staff as patients to do it as, you know, as themselves with their own registered practices, so they can understand the patient experience of how to use the NHS app to create the NHS login. And people will fail. The numbers I think are still quite small. They're either either there's two failure points. Either the NHS will say we need to do further checks, and they may verify them a few days later, or they will fail and they'll need the practice to do a step like what Finn showed, which is usually vouching them and creating some credentials to get them online. So that's just a little bit about the NHS app and NHS login, why we are promoting that one, because it's not just about general practice, actually it's wider than that. Okay, AirMid, and now this is where the confusion comes in, and I'm not going to go through all of this. This is for the next webinar. But the bit that I want to focus on is how to get them online. So wait, I'm just going to show them this. So why are we promoting two apps? Isn't that really confusing? The NHS app and the AirMid app. So some practices have rightly thought we're just going to promote the NHS app. Personally, I'm still suggesting you think about promoting both. And if I explain a little bit why, when you look at the apps, some of the functionality in AirMid is just better at doing certain things, purely because it's part of System 1. So, you know, like when you're looking at records, trying to export things out, download it, the AirMid app is a better functionality than the NHS app. But there's also another step. In the NHS app, if you want to request your full records, like you go down the NHS app, you say, I want to see my records, it just shows you a notification saying, contact your practice hasn't activated it. So it hasn't automated that for you. Whereas the AirMid app does automate it for you and gives you a way to control them requesting their access. And remember what we said about identification. If AirMid uses the NHS login, then you've just totally removed all the issues about, is this really the right person requesting their online access? I probably lost you, but I'm going to show you now a little video clip which just shows you the AirMid experience. So if you just see how this would work for the patient, and this is what we'd have to explain to the patient to do after they register your practice if they wanted to get online access.
When you open the AirMid app, the first thing you need to do is access it using your NHS login. In this case, I have set up my iPhone to use my Face ID, so I don't need to enter it in each time. You will then see the home page, which just gives you access to particular functions, but we need to go to the main menu. So tap on those three lines in the top left hand corner, and then you can see the main menu on the left hand side. If you look at that first list, right at the bottom you can see organisations. So tap on that, and then you can see the list of organisations you can access through this app. So if you then find your practice, so in this case Cloister Road Surgery, and tap on that, you can then see your settings for access to online services. So at the bottom you can see full record access, and there's the option to request access. So if you tap on that, it says this will send a message to the organisation requesting full clinical record access. Are you sure you want to do this? So if you tap on yes, and then you see that confirmation request sent successfully, and you can click on OK. Now that doesn't mean that you can get full access straight away. It means that the request has been sent to the practice, who then have to process it for you. So you still need to give it some time before you can then see your full record online through this app.
Okay, so that was a very quick, I'm just going to come out of this now. That was a very quick video that we just literally made like an hour before this. So what I've done is, in fact, I will share content again. So let me just go back. Sorry, I know this is a bit confusing. So I'm going to go back. What I've done, and this is literally this morning, so I'm not saying it's going to work, is if you look at our practice website. So when we go to register online services, again, we've tried to write down some of the steps they need to do. And I've embedded that video, I put it onto YouTube, and I've embedded it into here. So my thought is that, you know, obviously no practice has got the time to create some of these resources. We imagine that we create some of these guides, some of these videos that you all can just copy and paste into your websites, and that just navigates them through the experience of how to do it. Personally, I have actually found, I mean, I know it sounds tricky, but I found patients understand it reasonably well. That they've just done it. So when you do it this way, then it will just come in, their request will come in as a task, so it's easy just to process it. So you're not having to take phone calls or emails about their request. Okay, I think I'll should I just now shut up? So I'll hand back to Finn. Okay.
So I'm going to put myself on mute. So that is it in a nutshell. That's digital registration and the NHS app. So I think we've been trying to answer questions in the chat as they've been going along.
Sorry, did you say that the Airmed app uses the same login details
Yes.
as the NHS app?
Yes, which is why we're saying you're just ending psychologically rolling out System Online login details. And I actually think we're going to go for a journey that all those people with System Online are going to have to start to redo to NHS login.
Yeah.
So you can see, like, strategically as a practice, that removes all your headaches, all your issues about checking their identity. You're passing that responsibility to the NHS with the NHS login. All those problems with resetting passwords when they get it wrong all starts to go away. So you're removing that workload. So Airmed, and also, sorry, I'm going to say that, so I'm just going to deviate. The other product that now uses NHS login is eConsult. So eConsult, at the moment, when they go through your practice website, you don't even know who they are. You might spot now in the top right hand corner when you see eConsults that it says this patient, it's a green bar that says this patient was verified by the NHS login. They can access eConsult through the NHS app, and they can access, eventually, you're going to see on your practice website, eventually eConsult will roll into that website link that they can log in for the NHS login to verify them. So then as a practice, when they come in within NHS login, you really feel comfortable they are who they are.
Okay. With the NHS app, you can log into it with your fingerprint.
Yeah.
Is that also available with Airmed?
Yes, it is. I mean, that video probably was a bit too fast, but with that video, I'd set it up. The first time you log in, it asks you, do you want to set, I have an iPhone 10, so it said, do you want to use your Face ID to log in? So that video was showing it by Face ID. So it's really quick for the patient. So it's very similar to the NHS app in terms of how quickly it is to get into the app.
Right. Okay. See, because, sorry, I've just downloaded the Airmed app as we're speaking, and it's asking me for username, password, login.
Exactly. Okay, so you can use, if you were a patient and you had System Online login details, that app will accept it. But you can see we're still trying to promote the NHS login as the solution.
Yeah, because NHS app has worked wonderfully for me. You know, I use that. Yeah. That's really good. This is the first time I'm using Airmed.
Okay, so you can do a live test. Okay, well, we've got a couple of minutes. Live? If you use your NHS login, if we could catch up with you to see whether on the Airmed app you can get in.
Okay.
NHS login. Here we are. We're all like really excited.
See, you better get this right. With the NHS app, I use my fingerprint. So I don't put in my details. It just
right, you've never forgotten it. Okay, the first time you'll need to remember your details.
Yes.
So, okay, we'll let you figure that out. But Okay, the other side point, we've got Alex on the call and we've got a couple of GPs. The other reason we're suggesting this is you probably got the email about AcuRx and stuff, and we do not know the future of all the products out there on the market. AirMid does give you the ability to do video consultations. And it has got the, even things like medical certificates, if you created them and put them into the record, they can just access it on the AirMid app. So it gives you some contingency options. And then the final thing is you can publish things like surveys. So we will do a whole webinar to talk about some of these other functionalities later on. But this, we just want to emphasize that's probably why we're confusing people by suggesting both apps.
Right.
And it's interesting, even in our practice, some staff thought, oh, why do we need the NHS app? AirMid app does everything, it's better. And some staff thought, oh, why are we promoting AirMid? The NHS app would do enough. So you can see the nuances between the two.
Thank you.
So I will read in the questions or the chat. I think there's an ask for some crib sheets for reception and admin staff, so we can look at doing those, and perhaps doing a webinar aimed at reception staff so that they know what to say when patients, or advise them through NHS app. That, I mean, we've got someone who does that and it's really worked. So we basically try all the calls that come through about that, and the more you do it, the more you talk through with patients, the more they get to know all the funny things that can go wrong. She obviously doesn't know all the answers, but it's been a learning process, and we've got quite a few patients registered on NHS app now. And Shankar's very kindly said anyone can copy the wording from the Gloucester Road Surgery website. I've put it in a Word document and I will send it out with the slides from here, so people can copy and paste it into their website. So we'll do that. Any other questions on either the digital registration or the NHS app?
I would also be interested if people don't have any questions. Any people thinking this is just totally the wrong direction? They're uncomfortable with the direction we're heading in, or does this all make sense? And if you don't want to speak out, just even a chat comment, it'd be interesting to get that flavour. And also, if there's any practices that genuinely feel that they don't want to do this, and then the reasons why, it could be interesting to understand that.
No, we're quite happy with all this IT, this technology and advancements, etc. My only reservations were, which I've emailed you guys about, the online registration form, where we had incidents of identity fraud and so forth, and then we just worry that the actual, is the patient a genuine person? Who are they? We're not sure. So that was it really. And also, as Finn mentioned earlier, and you mentioned as well, certain things that we feel we don't really need on the forms, like their history, because we do new patient checks anyway. Now they're online and they're video calls, but our HCA, she gets all that information from them at that time. So it's just, too much paperwork. When it becomes paper heavy, patients, especially the demographics that we have here, patients, they barely fill in their name and date of birth. So, we get lots and lots of these registration forms which are incomplete.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think that's the balance of what we put as mandatory, because they can't get further without. And I suppose it's also the process at the practice end, that as soon as one comes in, checking it, and the patient isn't registered until you accept them. So if their form isn't filled out correctly, I think you can legitimately go back and say you need to fill out these questions. And if they've provided an email address, then you can email them back, as opposed to trying to get hold of them on the phone. But yeah, that's the next bit is going to be the difficult bit, is to try and agree between 75 practices what form we want, and whether or not there is a process, how we can make it as easy for patients to register that they are completed correctly, because obviously patients have got different levels of literacy, different levels of English, different levels of IT knowledge. So there isn't a perfect way, but I guess it's 75 heads are better than one. So if we try and figure out a compromise between us.
And in our case in Cloister Road, I felt that you could have endless discussions about the form, and it was actually nice that we were restricted to just that one version. And although there was limitations with it, I think overall the starting point is not that bad. There are a few glitches, but when you have a look at it, I think it's a reasonable starting point. It's fit for reasonable use at this stage. So I think it may just force us all to just make a decision, hopefully.
I think we're quite keen on the AirMid and well, certainly the NHS app and promoting it. Our concern is because we don't know much about it. If patients are asking us complicated questions about the IG and even the access to notes, it varies between what a practice setup. We can't see how it looks from their end, and so I think we just have a few concerns about that and kind of not understanding it all clearly.
I actually agree with you, and there's even a little bit with the AirMid app, because both apps are sort of tweaks. They're still like an evolution of it, and they don't have many online videos or training materials. One thing I do think is I think we're going to need to create more of those resources. One example is in our network, we've started to think of almost like a digital social prescriber role to create some of those resources and those training resources. Really, I think if you design the resources that explain it to the patient, those are the same resources you need for your staff to understand it. So I think we'd basically echo and agree with you, but you would hope also nationally more resources come online as it's rolled. The uptake grows and grows. So yeah. Having said that, some of the basic functionality of the NHS app is reasonable, so they may not understand all of it, but I think the basic bits, and I have started to see patients where we've just not navigated them to doing things, but they've just discovering it.
Any other questions or comments? Phil has posted some links, so thank you for that, Phil. And Victoria on the organisational preferences. So I think, unless anyone else has got any questions or comments, we will type up the questions and answers from this and send it out with the questionnaire, which I've done a draft at, but other people will need to amend, so that probably won't come out sort of straight away. It will come out in the next couple of weeks. And yeah, any and all feedback welcomed, and we will try and do the crib sheets for NHS app and AirMid for patients. Thank you, everybody. I think I'll give you back the 6 minutes and say goodbye until the next one, which I think is on the 14th. Is there one next week?
Thank you, both of you. Thanks.
No problem. See you all soon.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.